We start off with our usual prayer for teacher and student. Om Sahana Bhavatu Sahano Punaktu Sahaviryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavaditam Astoma Vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. May that one protect us both. May that one nourish us both. May we work together with great energy. May our study be illumined. May we not unnecessarily argue with each other. Peace, peace, peace be unto all. So I'm going to, as usual, just mute my microphone while you formulate some questions. And so it's over to yourselves.
So, good morning, Swami. Pleased to be here this morning with you.
Bonjour. Yeah.
And sorry, I don't think just have a question: how we can increase our humility?
Okay. How we can increase our humility is the same question as how can we decrease our pride? Oh, that's a very good question. All right, thank you. I've heard a statement once, somebody said, I'm humble and proud of it. So we can see that's a contradiction in terms. And yet it's a very real statement from people who feel that humility is a very great virtue. But on the other hand, if they try to exert themselves in a humble way, so to speak, then it's the very opposite of humility. Humility is something that should come naturally. It should come from a realization that there is a context to everything. Let's take, for example, the context of the world that we live in. Normally, we put ourselves in a circle, and ourselves would be at the center of it. And we have learned to do this because of survival instincts. We need to survive. And not only do we need to survive, but we need to thrive. Sometimes you ask people in certain countries, I won't name them, so how are you? Just surviving, they say. Well, all right, if you're in the desert and thirsty, and you have your last drop of water in a can, and maybe your last morsel of food, then I would say that was just surviving. We are doing much more than surviving. And we are trying to live in such a way that we want to improve the quality of our life. We want to improve the quality of our knowledge through education. In so many areas, we want to engage in some improvement. There's that statement, the biggest room in the world. What is the biggest room in the world? The biggest room in the world is the room for improvement. Now, we all, in order to survive, have a certain mechanism that has come about from a psychosocial evolution, what we call ego, a sense of I, a self-awareness that enables us to position ourselves in a survival mode where we have three options. We can either aggressively deal with life, or we can resign from it. We can run away from it. Or we can not know what to do. And so we stand there and mesmerized. These are the three general options that we take. But there is another option, and that is a deep appreciation and love. A love for life, a love for what is in front of us, an appreciation for our own existence, an appreciation for the environment that produced it. That can be engendered, that can be cultivated. But we have to get out of the egocentric position where our world is the only world that exists. And that creates a kind of combat zone, not just on the individual level, but we can now see it on national levels. We can see it in aggressive actions and warfare and misery. So the consequence of not having humility is to have the other opposite attitude, that is aggressiveness and arrogance, stemming from a certain pride that is to do with survival. And survival is always biological. It's always physical. Even though we may see ourselves as a well-cultured person involved in intellectual pursuits, the concept that we have always is as an embodied creature. And we can recall in our memory how it was as early as possible. And where it's not possible, then we can see by example from others that we came out in an unhappy environment. When the baby came out from the mother's womb, it didn't come out laughing. You didn't come out laughing. You felt nice and warm in your cocoon. The mother's heartbeat was a distant drumbeat. It was nice and warm. It was dark. It was fluid. And as you came out, then the whole thing changed. Your whole life changed. Somebody asked me, will you please write a biography of yourself? So good-humoredly, I said, yes, but you see, it'd have to be something a little funny, a little humorous. And I would probably start off, I was born in such and such a place at such and such a time, and therein lays the problem. That's where all the difficulties started. So we have to, first of all, understand that we need not stand in an egocentric position, even though the ego is useful to us. Without the ego, we have no real way of dealing with the world itself. And it's not the ego that's the problem. I saw so many interactions with some Buddhists, for example. They were saying, how can we get rid of the ego? And I thought to myself, why would you want to do that? Why would you want to get rid of the central identity of yourself? But no doubt, the self-image about yourself has to change. The approach to life has to change. We have to find a way around obstacles in a reasonable, joyful, and effective way. So how to do that? How to deal with life on the one hand, and ultimately, how to transcend things on the other. See, the yogic language for it is like this. Currently, all our experience is there in what we call the Mahakasha, the great space, what we can call the waking state of tables and chairs and people. But then you see we can go into a world of ideas, and that's an advancement in subtlety. And at that point, the point of ideas, the single egocentric position gets dispersed. An example of that would be dreams. But then we can push it further. We can go into understanding what things are themselves. This is technically called Chidakasha. Mahakasha, Chidakasha, and Chidakasha. And we want to aim for the last one. Consciously or unconsciously, we're trying to do it. But it's expressing itself in biological ways. And it's to get a level of sophistication and effort that takes this energy and redirects it in a higher way. That's what's required. And the more we advance in that, the lower we become. In other words, the more the ego diminishes. The greater we understand our real nature, commensurate to that will be the more the ego shrinks. And so this pride that we have, this lack of humility that is characterized by a typical human, is really an assertion that we are much more important than we actually are. And that means we haven't got the right perspective, even from a physical point of view. There may be over 7 billion people on the planet, so we are 1/7 billionth of the human population. That in itself should tell you a story. And then if you say, where are we situated? What is our habitat? And there are no permanent habitats. We're sitting on an earth. The earth was there or began at some point in time. Now, if we even go along that line of thinking, the earth wasn't always here. Something else was here. And it's as if there's an entity that so subtly wove something around itself, something called the earth, and then wove all the other ingredients around it in one small corner of it. Nowadays in astronomy, we understand the scale of the universe. How can you even imagine yourself to be important when you see that scale? A tiny dot, if you go to the edge of the solar system, you won't even notice that there's a dot called the Earth. And this solar system is just on the edge, the suburbs of the whole Milky Way galaxy. In order to turn that round, several hundred thousand years will be necessary to make a complete circuit around the galaxy. And the galaxy itself is moving. We don't think about it, but we're moving at incredible speeds because the galaxies themselves are turning and moving and expanding. Things are always dynamic. And where are we in this whole scheme of things? Not very much. You take the 11th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, you get some glimpse of this divine vision. And where are we in all of this? So every world that we encounter is a mirror image of a larger world. You can imagine a microorganism, a bacteria, trying to understand what is my environment I'm living in, and finds itself in a vast universe that we dismissively call the body. And for us, it's just a unit. Now you put that in a larger scale, increasingly larger scale. There's really no reason to feel important, just on a physical basis. Then there's the world of ideas in the Chitakasha. Looking at this vast world of ideas, we now go into a realm. This realm is the realm of energy, prana. Now, prana is such a vast area. It's not even an area, because nobody really knows what is energy. But our philosophy will say it is what we call divine energy. That is, it's not derived or manufactured. It was always there, either in a potential or manifested state. It will always be there. And what is the nature of it? The nature of it is infinite possibilities. Because I can take that energy, I can master it. What is the basis of my potential mastery? It's because I am beyond it. No matter how vast the universe is, no matter how vast energy is, like a kind of cosmic ocean with small eddies and currents and whirlpools in it, with one point being a sun, one point being a moon, one point being a human, one point being a house, one point being the sun, as I mentioned, one point being stars and galaxies, one point being so subtle we cannot even detect it, one manifestation of it being electricity. Who knows what is electricity? We only know something called mysterious electrons that appear and disappear. They can easily be moved in a certain direction and provide us with a manifestation of power that we can, depending on the adapter, see as electrical light or a lamp or heat or cooling or many different manifestations depending on the adapter. So where are we in the scheme of things? On the one side, we say we have the possibility of controlling the whole of energy. This the yogis will call pranayama. Pranayama, the control of the principle that makes something move. And in the yogic understanding, two things are there. The most generalized aspect of matter, potentially, is called akasha, because you can't trace it. So potential is it, so subtle is it, it's there. And then what acts on it is this prana, this energy. Don't ask what the energy is. It's beyond our scope of understanding, and yet we can control it. Why can we control it? Because we are way, way above it. We're way beyond it. We are vaster than that. Now, if you assert that without a real understanding, then all your humility will go. But if you assert it on the basis of a real understanding, the effect will be that everything that you view will be the same. There will be a oneness that is inherent and visible everywhere. You'll pick up that oneness everywhere. When you discover this generalized principle of energy, generalized principle of matter, and the oneness behind all of that, what is called Atman or self, then everything becomes the self. There's no difference anywhere. And that means this little ego will automatically dissolve. It'll melt. It'll become one with that universality. And the closer we get to that, the more humble we become. But humility is on several levels, because it's also a device to get you there also. And we start off then by the proper evaluation. Where am I in the grand scheme of things? Well, I have my limitations. Let me acknowledge these limitations. Let me acknowledge that one obstacle in acknowledging the limitations, and on the other side, making sure that I can use these limitations to develop a manifestation of my full potential through them, would be to engage in an increasing understanding of this obstacle, which we call ego, and on the positive side, to use it as an open channel for divine grace to flow. And when we say divine grace, we can call it love. We have to find out this feeling that we have that is natural within us. And here's the contrast and the difference. Pride is love in the embodied self, of the embodied self and its limitations. Humility is love beyond that, is love in the all. Humility is love everywhere, and with humility comes service. Now, supposing somebody opposes you and you stand your ground and you say, and the internal conversation always begins off with I think this, I did that, I am like this. Now, where is it coming from? Acknowledging that, yes, it's there for survival purposes and so on and so forth. We also have to acknowledge it as a great, great obstacle. And it always comes with a restricting self-image. It always comes with a desire, and it always comes with a fear. It always comes with a distorted view of who we are. Now, those who have done the Enneagram will understand where I'm going with this. So let us take stock of some possible approaches and self-images. Supposing you were psychologically in an area, where you had to live up to a parent's expectations, then naturally you might develop a self-image as part of a survival strategy that says, I'm right, I'm always right, I'm never wrong, I wish to be good and right, and the world is a place that has to be adjusted, has to be criticized until it's adjusted, has to be changed. And I'm right even when I'm wrong, I'm right. There's that position. Then another position might think that you all need to be served by me. I need to adjust you all and look after all your needs and serve you. That might look like humility, but it's not, because behind it may be the motivation to be appreciated and thanked. Or you might feel that you have to be seen in the right light by everybody. Or you might feel that something is defective in you and your reactions will be based on it. Or you might feel that you are the expert in varying fields or specialized fields. Let's just take that one as an example. Supposing you are born in a family where there may have been a lot of noise, you may not have had your own space, and you resorted to a comfort zone, tried to understand your environment, and you lost some kind of hope in yourself, and you regained some kind of element of satisfaction by understanding your environment, by withdrawing into a world of thinking, analyzing, creating some planned strategies in order to deal with the world and in order to assert yourself. Then you might see how that can develop into a position which says, I am the expert, kind of self-image. A self-image which you want to impress on others. And so every conversation you have with somebody, this is an extreme case, you will want to assert that you know much better than the other person. Now, the problem with that position is, if you have a self-image that says, I am wise, there's a subscript in brackets that says, everybody else is fool. I am wise, you're all fools. It's an arrogant position, not exactly acknowledged as that, but it becomes a great obstacle. And I'm just taking it as an example. How do we correct it? Well, we correct it, as we correct everything, we take a shift in our understanding. And we start evaluating things in a proper way. And we start going on a spiritual journey which asserts the only omniscient entity is what religion calls God. That is the only omniscient entity that there is. And all of the knowledge that has come to me is God's grace flowing as thought. And every word that comes out of my mouth is a manifestation of that. Earlier we were talking about energy. It's all a manifestation of divine energy coming out. It just happens to come out as speech. And the speech really is a crystallization of what I think. And then how to deal with people on that basis. I have to see that divine principle inside everyone. When I see, nay, when I feel that divine entity in everyone, in every person, and in every situation, including the whole universe, what will be my situation, my self-image in relation to it? I'll become extremely small, willingly so. Because there's such thing as false humility, a politician. In my humble opinion, there's nothing humble about a politician's opinion. So this spontaneous expression will automatically put things in perspective. You will then be an open channel for divine grace to flow. Instead of being a restricting thing, you'll be an opening thing. Instead of being a selfish person, restricting your distribution of generosity, you'll be a distributor of everything, of all goodness and truth, of beauty, of love, of harmony. You'll be the light that shines on the world. But you won't register yourself in this way. You'll register yourself as a gateway, a kind of keyhole a kind of instrument that you're happy to be played, a kind of opening that distributes love and generosity everywhere. The question of where am I in the scheme will not arise. In Swami Shivananda, Mahapurush Maharaj's speech at the first convention of the Ramakrishna movement, in that speech he said, "Be like a sword that is wielded in the user's hands. It doesn't complain if it falls on a hard place or a soft place. It is just happy to be used." And that means then that the human body becomes instrumental, human mind becomes instrumental, the emotional mind becomes instrumental, and all your faculties in every cell of the body becomes instrumental, becomes an expression of what you experienced internally. And what you experienced internally was a universality, a truth, a kind of internal light that you cannot get by dealing with the world outside or externally. You can only do it by an internal shift. How do you develop and increase humility? Increase the depth of your interior spiritual life. That's what is necessary. And when you do that, you will start seeing that same element that you see in yourself as in everyone and everything else. Then, of course, there is the question of cultivation of certain virtues and imposition of certain restraints, collectively called tapasya. Tapasya means developing strength, sufficient strength in you to overcome any obstacle. Developing the willpower that you are in control of everything, be it energy, be it matter, be it your own mind, be it your speech, be it your body. In the Bhagavad Gita, we have in the 17th chapter, we understand these threefold aspects of faith, of tapasya, I should say, of discipline. The body, speech, and mind. When it comes to speech, well, we have to have a technique. Where we agree with somebody, we can say yes. Where we disagree, we can keep quiet. This is not a resentful quietness. This is not a quietness that says, the Swami said I should say nothing, but boy, I wish I could say something. That doesn't work, you see. There has to be an internal attitude of peace that understands that whatever is before me is saturated with divine presence, divine love, saturated with divinity, in which case all sounds are sacred and precious, no matter how distorted they come out to me. So, in dealing with the situation, we have to be understanding enough not to engage in battles of egos. We have to have sufficient coolness of mind to evaluate things nicely, to evaluate things properly in their proper context. And if we have love and compassion, we also have service. The question of humility doesn't arise, it's automatically there. Ramakrishna was he said, oh, you're a great guru and so on. So he said, no. I'm lower than the lowest worm. Such a great person said this. It's not that he was echoing a sentiment, a theological sentiment that I am a worm or I'm a sinner or any of these things. No, he wasn't asserting that. What he was saying is this, that on the other side of that is a great glory, and that in comparison to that, things are small, and he's the smallest of all, commensurate to the other side, which is full glory, all around, everywhere present. Of course, the first thing we learn in life and in monastic life particularly is to knock out the ego. Get the egoism gone. Very often this is done in uncomfortable circumstances. I always remember in my own training that there was an engineer who was a friend of mine, and he just joined monastic life. And senior monks, knowing his education and so on, remarked, they gave him a broom and asked him, please sweep the leaves. And the leaves in the courtyard, it was a particularly windy day, and he was a good engineer, but he was a hopeless sweeper. And so senior monks used to come along and sarcastically say, no, you see, when you sweep, the idea is to collect the leaves in one pile, not sweep them so that they all blow away everywhere. Now, a person has two options. They can take it in all humility, even suffer the indignity of it for the time being. And that's the start of all discipline. An element of suffering has to be there because you're going against a habitual grain. And the whole meaning of tapasya means heat generated by going against the grain, by friction. And when we have to embrace change or difficulties, it requires friction. And friction produces heat. So it's no surprise that he could have gotten heated. He could have taken the option. He could have said, who are you to tell me? I'm an engineer. I used to be an engineer. I used to be well respected. And who are you? And I'm fed up. Throw the broom on the ground and walk out. That could be one approach. But you see, the reason why somebody wants to become a monk, among other things, is to serve others. Why else would you do it? And so, knowing that some rough edges have to be knocked out. In all educational systems, it's the case. Until we have such a precious jewel nicely refined that it reflects the full glory of what is behind it. The full divinity, the full light is then nicely reflected and shines. So we have to be prepared, first of all, do we have rough edges and what are they? Secondly, are we prepared to have them shaped and knocked out? Thirdly, how will we do it? We have to accept the humility of a situation first. And that goes in parallel with a growth and a richness in your interior life, your spiritual life. Because that is where you find the equality. You find the equality in unity. And that is where you find that compared to the depth and richness of what you discover inside, all these outside things pale into insignificance and become trivial. And soon you realize the whole of life that you've been living and taking so seriously and defending to the hilt at all costs is nothing more than trivial pursuit. And in amongst this cultivation has to be done with a sporting attitude. Because as you engage in life more and more, you see how much of a game it is, how much of a sport it is. There are no fixed things in it. There's a constant change going on. There's a kind of drama of waves. Even when you consider the subject of energy, you'd be wise to take energy not as segments or deliveries at the end of your lamp bulb. No, you'd take it as an ocean, an indefinable, unshaped ocean. Cosmic waves and vibrations everywhere. And what you find here and now is only a tiny, tiny bubble. What you are here and now is an instrumental thing where the whole of the ocean can flow through. And there won't be any pride in it. No more than if you say, I'm a sword, which does not complain, in Swami Shivananda's words. So we have to cultivate that attitude. The attitude that says, I am merely an instrument. What I consider I, small I, body, mind complex, is just an instrument. But behind that, something that is able to mobilize every power that you can think of. And when you access that and exert that, pride won't be there, because that element will be found everywhere, just as the ocean of energy will be found everywhere. So some particular exercises have to be done. First of all, you see the Christ says, the first shall be last and the last shall be first. So the first thing is to put yourself in the last place. That's the first thing. First thing and last thing. Put yourself in last of all. Serve others first, put yourselves last. But then, even if you do that, if you don't have an accompanying attitude that goes with it, it's not going to work. So the accompanying attitude must be that I am serving the Lord is the most convenient attitude. If what I give to others is with an attitude that the others are God dressed up in this way, then my service will be pure. My service will be generous. My service will be rewarding. I'll be satisfied with it. It'll be a divine offering. So we can start off like that. And that has to be done, as I said before, with the growth in your interior life, where you access the ever-increasing, ever-revealing layers and levels of this divinity within you, coming out in different ways. And along with that will come a spontaneous spirit of service. And along with that will also come a level of self-control, because all our perceptions are to do with reactions. When we look at something, it is because the eyes pick something up. And when somebody tells us something, good or bad, we have to learn to monitor our reactions. And that means we have to be aware of where our center of consciousness is at all times. We have this probe, this instrument that we call attention. Where is it centered at any given moment? And if it is self-centered, then we will be proud and egoistic, and our behavior will be egocentric. But when it's centered on another, then we will be involved in ever-increasing humility. We will automatically be doing it. When the other comes first, when we're prepared to take the crumbs as remnants and consume them, and not consume the first food first and give the crumbs to others. When we give the main food to others and reserve the crumbs for ourselves, if there are any left, and do it in a natural, spontaneous way, then we have reached the threshold of humility. So humility on the one side, pride on the other side. We have to be watchful. If we are to cultivate something, we always have to be watchful. We have to be alert for it and see where the areas that require correction. Not next year. It's like if you're training to be a footballer and somebody pulls you aside and they notice you're good at passing, you're not good at heading. You wouldn't wait for a whole season or a year to pass before you make the correction. You'll want to make it there and then. We have to learn to make the corrections here and now, as it arises, as we notice in the mind. And as we do that, then we replace whatever is there of an egoistic nature, because that's always where it arises, and substitute it with a higher value, better value. Play a game like that. Play it constantly, no holiday for it. Always having to do it. Always being aware what is in the mental field at any one time. And cheerfully, not with repression, with acceptance, understanding these are old friends that used to be useful to us, stamping and screaming and crying, objecting. That was a form of behavior, no doubt. But there's a new one. I have new friends, higher values, more treasures, better jewels. I can engage these and have a tea party with the new friends. And the old friends may not like it. They may sulk and go off. It's all right. You see my attitude always. Those who know me, come if you want, stay if you can, go if you must. Be polite, be hospitable, but don't allow them to stay very long. Have their tea and go, and replace them with higher values. See, there's no substitute for love. Of all the highest spiritual qualities and values which are there, they all come under the heading of love. Pride is love of yourself. Humility is love of others. So engender a love of others that echoes that loving nature and aspect that you discovered in your own interior, in your own spiritual practice. I hope that wasn't too confusing an answer.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Oh, so I can't hear anything. Okay. Did you say something? When my microphone is here and I can't hear anything.
No, I just say thank you very much, Swami. It was very, very nice to see how to equilibrate both sides. Not to equilibrate, of course, but to try to recognize it and to do something.
You see, there's such a thing as false humility. If we're not careful, we can fall into that trap. But genuine humility will be a spontaneous thing that arises commensurate with the decline of our sense of ego, our egocentric position. And that has a number of different components to it. It comes with a self-image. I am this. And along with that, if somebody opposes that self-image, then I will crush them and react. It comes with an internal script that could say, how dare they say that? How dare they do this? And when you notice the script coming, that's the point to draw a halt and say, wait. Let me stand back and revalue this a little bit. It's going to end in tears. Particularly as the other person has the same problem, if it's to do with people. The other person has the same problem. They're also making a defense structure. Then you're in a combat zone. And that's never very useful. Make your own mind the combat zone. That's okay. But make it a sporting one. I heard somebody once say, oh, we need to crush the mind. We need to do away with it. Why? What for? The mind is a very useful thing. And there are two things about the mind. See, the mind can be full. It's called mindful. Or it could be mindful. These are two opposite and different things. And normally our attention is not centered in any particular way. When it's not centered in any particular way, it becomes scattered and confusing. In amongst that confusion, a spontaneous habitual action or reaction will come out that is evidence of your ego. And when that comes out, unfortunately, there are repercussions. There could be repercussions in you, such as guilt and anger and so on. And if not in you, they'd be definitely in somebody else. So we try to avoid a combat zone, and we take the lower ground. It all comes under the heading of love. Okay, 7 minutes to go. Any more questions? I had to cram as much as I possibly could into the answer. See, this is why we do the Enneagram. For those people who've done the Enneagram with me, this is a foundation course, a fundamental course, because every personality type, and there are many different types, every personality type will identify with this ego, which is a combination of an identification of an embodied state with a certain mode of behavior or accumulation of certain modes of behavior. And that will be packaged and said, this is me. That's I. How to break that? Well, you have to, first of all, see, that is not me. This is just my instrumental self. And then to see what is the nature of that particular variety. Maybe it's useful to find out how it started in childhood as an old friend. And then how to deal with it, and to understand also everybody else has the same problem. I'm not the only one who has the same problem, has this problem. Everybody has it. That means I can be compassionate toward myself and others. I can't blame anybody. I can't blame parents. I can't blame the country I was born in, or I can't blame my past samskaras, or nothing like that. Nothing like that is to blame. It's simply we're in a situation that we have to deal with now. And when we take it up now by putting a proper perspective on it, spiritual life is putting things into perspective. When I try to find out what is the truth, everything coordinates into a pattern and then becomes a self-evident thing. So what is that self-evident thing that makes me view this body-mind complex in a different way, and an authentic, deep entity in me, man, the unknown, that inner self? What is the nature of that? These two things have to be done in parallel. And when the uncovering happens on the one side, the discovering happens on the other. And then we have to see, is it the same for everybody? Yes, must be the same for everybody. So I'm a one-trick pony because I only have one thing to say. See God in everyone. See God in all things, and see God in everyone. I should mention also, when we start off our private spiritual practice, that is meditation, japa, prayer, we start off with this humility. We start off with a sense of helplessness. Helplessness is the best way of describing it. Not hopelessness, helplessness. That is, I'm here and I'm prepared to be a recipient. I'm prepared to listen. Prayer is listening. It is not asserting. This is not talking. It is coming to a point where you are in a listening mode. You're waiting. You're waiting for a voice. You're waiting for a revelation. Prayer is listening. Prayer is silence to the point of hearing the sweet silent voice of the divine. And so even prayer, especially, will start off with this cultivation of humility. You'll put yourself in a helpless position. That is a position like a child. There's a great difference between being childlike and being childish. Childish has no humility. Childlike has all the humility. You see the difference. And being like a child, you enjoy things much more, by the way. Every child enjoys skipping. Every child enjoys running, jumping, laughing, giggling, climbing trees. The problem with adults is nothing like that happens. The problem by the seaside, at the beach, is the children want to get sand or wet sand all over them, and the parents want you not to do it. The children want to frolic in the waves. The adults don't want you to get wet. The adults are behaving childishly, and the children are being childlike. If we want really to enjoy life much more, it's much more fun to be just like a child and enjoy the things that a child enjoys. Much better to have an attitude of life toward that, isn't it? Just like that. Seeing new scenes everywhere, delighting in all of those, new experiences, wonderful. With God as your companion on your journey, your friend, come on. Let us enjoy this together. So you see, the thought of the day was something like that. Let us enjoy it all together. Come on. Let us not put you at a distance. Let me not sit you above the clouds on a throne and bring you out on a Sunday and put you back on a Monday. I know you won't knock and say, let me out. That's okay. Next Sunday, I'll bring you out. And I'll bring you out very briefly, because 20 minutes I can bring you out for, maybe 10 minutes, 20 minutes, because there's a big rugby match on in the afternoon, or a soccer match, you see. So that is not really religion as realization. Swami Vivekananda's definition of religion. Religion is realization. There has nothing to do with realization. All it is ticking off the boxes, making sure that your traditional duties and expectations are fulfilled. There's no interior feeling about it. And because of that, there's no revealing factor in it. It's not a revelation at all. So there's nobody more humble than a child, I would hazard a guess. And the secret of its humility will be in the fact that it knows it has to learn so much more and wants to ask questions and is continuously curious and is like a sponge absorbing all the beautiful events and novel things in life and applying their creativity with it and their imagination with it. As I mentioned yesterday, the famous atheist philosopher Bertrand Russell had said something like, it seems the whole purpose of our modern education system is to completely destroy our creativity by introducing rules and regulations and stringencies. Instead of allowing a certain freedom, Fribol and so on, Sister Nivedita was interested in state-of-the-art education techniques because she realized that the education system of putting somebody in a straitjacket and giving them motivation from reward and punishment will not tap into your creativity. People have to be encouraged. And so this creativity is there with a child. And all the qualities you require are there in a child. This is very different from thinking that spiritual life and discipline has to be sackcloth and ashes. Is a terrible thing. It restricts your freedom. So how will we engage in spiritual discipline? We'll shut ourselves away in a cloister. We will pray day and night. We try to look as miserable as possible, of course. We'll deny ourselves all the things in life. We'll make things so uncomfortable for ourselves. That is really not spiritual discipline. And yes, there are moments of hard tapasya that people do and have to do. But you see, behind it all, there will be a commensurate inner joy opening up with every restriction that is imposed. An inner joy starts opening up. It's not one-sided. All right, good. That might be enough for today, and probably for a whole week.
Thank you, Swami.
Okay.
Thank you, Swami. Thank you, Swami.
Good.
Thank you,
Merci beaucoup, Swami.
Merci beaucoup.
Guru Maharaj, Swami.
Yeah. Bonne journée. Yes.
Merci.
Okay. Guru Maharaj.
Thank you, Swamiji.
Thank you, Swami.
Thank you, Swamiji.